But I mean, even more extraordinary is Kamala Harris today telling the crowd that no president in US history has been able to do as much in 2 terms as Joe Biden has achieved in 1. And then she wondered why it didn't get much of a reaction from the crowd. She had to kind of generate an applause.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In 1 term, he has already, yes, you may clap. In 1 term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office.
Yeah, when you've got to force the applause, it ain't much of an applause.
There was one guy doing a golf clap and she's like, yes, keep going. Everyone join in.
Reminds us of another US presidential candidate, Jeb Bush, who had a similar problem.
I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country, to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
That wasn't an encouragement to clap. That was just a sigh of resignation.
Well, I need it. But and watching, you said we'll get to the weirdness of Kamala Harris. So let's go there. That clip of her saying, "We love you, Joe. We love you so much."
I mean, like, it's family to us.
It's got all the sincerity of someone like, you know, you're telling your mother-in-law that you love her dearly and she's the best thing that's ever happened in your life. No, we all know you hate your mother-in-law. Right? It's just how things work. She is loving herself sick right now because all the pieces have fallen into place. I suspect she probably thought that the way she would get to the presidency is not via an election. It would have been via Joe Biden sneezing heavily and then, you know, his insides sort of coming out of all orifices, and that was the end of him, and that she would just sort of automatically ascend to the job that way. She probably didn't think it would come like this. But nevertheless, you know, you got this dopey woman who laughs at absolutely everything she says. I mean, she cracks herself up with her own jokes that aren't even jokes, and she is now, most likely, going to be the Democratic pick to run for president. She cannot believe her luck. She is the luckiest woman alive right now, except for the fact, of course, that she doesn't stand much of a chance of beating Joe Biden. But she'll be loving herself, beating Joe Biden, beating Donald Trump. She's already beaten Joe Biden. We saw that over the last few days. But she will be loving herself sick in the lead up to that election.
The woman that Trump aptly called, quote, dumb as a rock. End quote. But speaking of a coup, sources have now come out to the Post saying, yes, in fact, the Democrats at the highest levels of the party threatened Joe Biden and said, if you don't step down, we'll just get you out of the top spot using our own means. A source speaking to the Post said that debate, that disastrous debate with millions of eyes on it, was a setup to convince Democrats that he couldn't run for president. And it wasn't hard for anyone watching at home to make that assessment all by themselves.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Trump's patient confusion, just channeling the emotions of everyone watching there. But this is exactly what I said. The minute the Democrats said, actually, we will have a debate, earliest presidential debate in American history, that far out to an election, we will have a debate. I said there's only 2 reasons why they would do this. Either to prove to everyone, we'd see the Manhattan Project of pharmaceutical stimulants on display, and everyone would be like, oh, actually, he's not that bad. Why are people raising all these concerns about his mental faculties? Or number 2, which I highly suspected, the whole idea was to watch him crash and burn so that everyone would turn against him and say this guy's got to go. And it worked perfectly.
And the other evidence that this was set up was the way that CNN handled the debate. I mean, we all noted at the time that they were softballing questions to Donald Trump. And the use of the split screen that we just saw there enabled Biden to stumble and mumble while Donald Trump, without saying a word, managed to, as you said, channel all our thoughts to exactly what was happening. It was quite remarkable that CNN allowed that. And then, of course, straight after the debate, every left-wing news outlet immediately slammed Biden, started to question his suitability. Then there were leaks. Then Democrats put their names to the leaks. Then George Clooney came out. But one strange thing that I didn't sort of note as being that important at the time was, remember we were joking about the fact that Biden started getting his advice from Hunter. And we all thought, well, I mean, this is ridiculous. Hunter's a crackhead advising the president. But it makes sense now, because if the family felt we are being set up, we are being pushed out, there would literally be no one left to trust other than your immediate family. So it wasn't so stupid that he had Hunter in all the meetings. It was just he dared not trust anybody else. That's the way it now seems.
Potentially so. I mean, you know, take advice from a crackhead. At least you can trust him because he's your son, right?
What does that say about the Dems?
Well, indeed. I think there's two distinct eras of Biden now. The clip we just played was BT, before Tan, and then you have the post-Tan Biden, which is where it's all sort of fallen apart. But the more you look into the rules that were put around that debate, I mean, the fact that the microphones were closed when the other was speaking, which played straight into Trump's hands because it prevented him from constantly interrupting and making a menace of himself, which made Trump look good. And the fact that Biden was the one who challenged Trump to a debate, right? And you would have thought if you were Biden or any of his advisors, much like, and of course they did have debates in 2020, but much like 2020, your strategy would be to put Biden in the bunker and keep him as far away from the public and the cameras and the journalists as possible, because you know that's where he can potentially slip up. And what we had was Biden come out and post a video online saying, you know, you name the time and place, buddy, I'm ready to go. I mean, you can't tell me that Biden genuinely thought he was, well, maybe he would have genuinely thought it, but that he was ready to go for a debate. But that his aides, unless they were setting him up, would not have said, look, Mr. Biden, we reckon a debate mightn't be the best thing you could do for your campaign.
It was a step.
Why don't we just sort of leave that to one side? But no, they threw down the gauntlet, and that's ultimately what brought him undone.
But how magnificent is the way that Obama has played this? I mean, remember after the debate, he just said, look, anyone can have a bad night. One bad night doesn't mean anything. Yeah, well, meanwhile, everybody else is doing the dirty work. Yeah. Now Kamala has stepped forward and Biden has said, well, we will have a process and I trust the party to come up with the right. Obama's not got his fingerprints on anything. No. And yet you can see him all over it.
Oh, he's extremely shrewd. You've got to give him that. And everyone saw that during his presidency as well. He was known as a very brilliant orator. He's a wonderful wordsmith and he's playing his cards very close to his chest. Even if that is, he doesn't want to be seen endorsing a woman who is, like Trump said, as dumb as a rock.